In a faraway galaxy, a beautiful planet called Xylara shimmered like a jewel among the stars. The planet was ruled by Queen Xylara, a strong and wise leader. She had long flowing hair that sparkled like silver in the light of her sun. The people loved her, but they also feared her. Xylara was known for her fierce temper and her powerful magic. She made sure her empire was safe, but she was always ready to fight anyone who threatened her reign. One day, dark clouds gathered in the sky over Xylara. The air felt heavy, and the people sensed that something terrible was coming. Xylara stood on her balcony looking out at the horizon. She could feel a storm brewing, but it was not a natural storm. It was the approach of an enemy fleet, ready to attack. Her heart raced as she realized the danger. Far away on a small blue planet called Earth, a clever mechanic named Jake was working in his garage. He was a simple man with messy hair and grease-stained hands. Jake loved fixing things, especially old machines. He spent his days tinkering with engines and dreaming of adventure. Little did he know his life was about to change forever. One quiet evening, while Jake was working, he heard a strange noise coming from a small radio. Curious, he turned up the volume. A garbled voice broke through the static, speaking in a language he didn't understand. Suddenly, the signal became clear, and he heard words of panic. "Help us! We are under attack! We need a hero!" The voice belonged to someone in trouble, and Jake's heart raced. Without thinking, Jake grabbed his tools and ran to his computer. He began to trace the signal, which led him to a location far beyond the stars. The message was coming from a planet he had never heard of before, Xylara. Excitement and fear filled him. He could not ignore this call for help. Back on Xylara, the situation was dire. Enemy ships darkened the sky, firing lasers and destroying everything in their path. Queen Xylara stood in her throne room surrounded by her loyal guards. They looked worried as they reported the damage. "Your Majesty, the enemy is advancing quickly. We must fight back," one guard shouted. Xylara felt a mix of anger and fear. She could not let her people down. "Prepare the royal fleet," she commanded. "We will not let them take our home." The guards nodded, knowing the queen would lead them into battle. As the royal fleet took to the skies, Xylara felt a surge of determination. She knew the risks, but she would fight to protect her people. However, deep down, she also felt a strange sense of loneliness. She was powerful, but she was alone. No one truly understood her struggles. Meanwhile, Jake's computer beeped, and he found a team of astronauts who were ready to help. They were a brave group, excited about the chance to travel to another planet. Jake quickly joined them, his heart pounding with anticipation. He felt like a hero already, even though he had no idea what awaited him. The ship lifted off, leaving Earth behind. As they flew through the stars, Jake stared out the window, mesmerized by the beauty of space. But he also felt a weight on his shoulders. He was heading into danger, and he hoped he could help Queen Xylara. Back on Xylara, Xylara and her forces clashed with the enemy. Explosions lit up the sky, and the sound of battle echoed through the air. As she fought valiantly, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there, coming to her aid. A spark of hope ignited within her heart. Perhaps help would come from the most unexpected place, a human from a distant world. As the battles raged on, both Xylara and Jake prepared for the challenges ahead. Little did they know that their paths would soon cross, leading to an adventure neither of them could have imagined. Jake and his team of astronauts flew through the vastness of space, excitement buzzing in the air. The spaceship, named the Star Explorer, was filled with high-tech gadgets and bright screens. Jake sat at the controls, his heart racing. This was the adventure he had always dreamed of, but it came with a heavy responsibility. They were on a mission to save Queen Xylara and her planet from destruction. As the ship traveled faster than the speed of light, Jake looked at the faces of his team. There was Captain Lisa, a skilled pilot with short hair and sharp eyes. She was brave and confident, always ready to lead. Next to her was Dr. Sam, a scientist who loved to study alien life. He wore glasses and was busy checking the ship's systems. Then there was Mia, a communications expert who kept trying to contact Xylara's people for more information. They all shared the same goal, to save a world in need. "Prepare for approach," Captain Lisa called out, her voice steady. "We are almost at Xylara." Jake focused on the controls, adjusting their path to avoid asteroids and enemy ships that floated dangerously close. The excitement of being in space was mixed with worry. They didn't know what they would face when they arrived. Suddenly, alarms blared in the cockpit. Mia's voice trembled as she shouted, "We have enemy ships ahead! They're blocking our way!" Jake's heart sank. They had to get past these ships to reach Xylara. "What do we do?" he asked, feeling the pressure. Captain Lisa took a deep breath. "We can't turn back. We must push through. Jake, can you make the ship faster?" Jake nodded, determination flooding his veins. He remembered his days in the garage, fixing engines and making them run better. This was his moment to shine. He quickly worked the controls, rerouting power to the engines. The Star Explorer surged forward, and the enemy ships fired laser beams at them. "Hold on!" Jake shouted as the ship swerved and dodged the blasts. The crew held their breath, gripping their seats tightly. Just as it seemed they would be hit, Jake spotted an opening. "There! We can make it through that gap!" He pointed ahead. Captain Lisa nodded and steered the ship toward the narrow space. With expert precision, she navigated the Star Explorer through the dangerous path, narrowly escaping the enemy fire. Cheers erupted in the cabin as they flew past the enemy ships. "Great job, team!" Lisa exclaimed. "We did it!" But Jake knew they were not out of danger yet. They still needed to find Xylara and help her reclaim her throne. As they neared the planet, the sight of Xylara took their breath away. The landscape was stunning. Lush green forests, tall mountains, and sparkling blue rivers. But the beauty was marred by the dark smoke rising from the cities, a reminder of the war that raged on. Jake felt a mix of awe and fear. This was the place where they could make a difference. "Prepare for landing!" Captain Lisa announced. They were close to Xylara's palace, the heart of her empire. Jake felt a surge of courage as he realized they were about to meet the Queen. He could be her savior. The team landed the Star Explorer in a clearing just outside the palace. They stepped out, taking in the air filled with tension. Jake looked at his friends, determination shining in their eyes. "We can do this. Let's find Queen Xylara." They moved quickly through the forest, following a path that led to the palace. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance, and Jake felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. What if they were too late? What if they couldn't help her? As they reached the gates of the palace, they saw soldiers fighting fiercely against the enemy. Xylara's guards were brave but outnumbered. Jake's heart pounded. They had to act fast. "Stick together," Captain Lisa ordered. "We'll create a distraction." Mia nodded and began to communicate with Xylara's guards, explaining who they were and how they had come to help. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This was just the beginning of their brave mission, and he knew they would face many challenges ahead. Together they charged into the fray, ready to fight for a queen they had never met, but whose cause they now believed in deeply. Jake realized that he was not just a mechanic anymore. He was part of something much bigger. The battle raged on outside the grand palace of Xylara. Jake and his team rushed through the gates, ready to help the queen and her guards. The air was thick with smoke, and the sounds of laser blasts and explosions filled their ears. Jake's heart raced as he took in the chaos around him. "Stay close!" Captain Lisa shouted, leading the way through the courtyard. They dodged blasts from enemy weapons, and Jake felt adrenaline surge through his veins. He had never fought in a battle before, but he was determined to do everything he could to help. As they pushed further into the palace, they spotted Xylara surrounded by a group of her guards. She fought bravely, her magic glowing brightly as she cast powerful spells to protect her people. But there were too many enemies. Jake could see her frustration and fear in her eyes, and he felt a strong urge to help her. "Look, that's her," Mia pointed, excitement and awe in her voice. "That's Queen Xylara." Jake could hardly believe it. The queen looked regal and fierce, her silver hair flowing like a waterfall as she moved. He had expected her to be intimidating, but there was also something vulnerable about her. "Let's get to her," Captain Lisa urged. They rushed toward the queen, fighting off any enemies in their path. As they got closer, Xylara noticed them. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice strong but curious. "Why do you fight for me?" "We're here to help," Jake called out, trying to be heard over the noise of battle. "We came from Earth. We want to save you and your planet." Xylara hesitated for a moment, clearly taken aback by the sight of a human fighting alongside her people. "Humans?" she said, looking at them with a mix of confusion and hope. You came to help us? Yes, Jake replied, stepping forward. We heard your call for help. We couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Zylara studied him closely, and Jake felt a flutter of nerves. He could see the strength in her eyes, but he could also sense her doubt. Then fight with me, Zylara commanded, her voice full of authority. We must push these invaders back. With that, she turned back to the battle, and Jake followed her lead. He felt a thrill of excitement. He was fighting alongside a queen. Together they fought valiantly. Zylara cast spells that sent bright bolts of energy flying at the enemy, while Jake and his team used their tools and quick thinking to outsmart their foes. The enemy was caught off guard by the humans' bravery and clever tactics. As the tide of battle shifted, Jake couldn't help but admire Zylara. She moved with grace and power, inspiring her guards to fight harder. He felt a sense of camaraderie growing between them. They were all united in their fight for freedom, and for the first time, Jake felt like he truly belonged. Just as victory seemed within reach, a powerful enemy commander emerged from the shadows. He was tall and imposing, with dark armor that gleamed in the light of the battle. "Foolish queen," he bellowed. "You think you can defeat me? Your planet will be mine!" Zylara stood tall, her eyes blazing with defiance. "We will never surrender," she declared, her voice ringing out. Jake felt a rush of courage. He couldn't let Zylara fight this monster alone. "Together!" Jake shouted, rallying his team and Zylara's guards. They charged forward as one, ready to face the commander. The air crackled with energy as Zylara unleashed her magic, while Jake and his friends fought with everything they had. The enemy commander swung his weapon, but Zylara deftly dodged. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a wave of energy crashing into him. He staggered back, but he quickly recovered, glaring at the queen. "You think you can defeat me with magic and a few humans? You are mistaken!" Jake felt a surge of determination. This was their chance to prove themselves. "We can do this!" he yelled to Zylara. "Let's finish this together!" With a fierce cry, Zylara nodded. They combined their powers, and with a final, powerful strike, they knocked the commander back, causing him to fall to the ground in defeat. The remaining enemies, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat, fear spreading through their ranks. As the battle came to an end, Zylara turned to Jake, her expression a mix of gratitude and wonder. "You fought bravely, human. I did not expect such strength from your kind." Jake smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "Thank you, Your Majesty. We're stronger when we work together." In that moment, he realized that their surprising meeting had forged an unbreakable bond between them, setting the stage for the challenges yet to come. After the fierce battle, the palace of Queen Zylara was quiet. The sounds of fighting had faded, leaving behind an air of calm mixed with hope. Jake and his team stood in the grand hall, catching their breath. They had fought bravely and won, but they knew the fight was not over yet. Zylara looked at her palace, now filled with weary but victorious soldiers. "We must regroup," she said, her voice strong. "We have pushed back the invaders for now, but they will return. We need a plan." Jake felt a rush of admiration for her. She was not only a queen, but also a fierce leader. "What can we do to help?" he asked, eager to contribute. Zylara smiled at him, her silver hair shimmering in the light. "Your courage has already made a difference, but we must prepare for the next attack. I will need your knowledge of Earth technology." Mia, standing beside Jake, nodded enthusiastically. "We have some advanced tools and strategies from Earth. We can share those with you." Zylara's eyes lit up with interest. "Then let us work together. I want to learn from you, and I want you to understand my people and our struggles." As they began to plan, Jake felt a growing sense of purpose. He was no longer just a mechanic from Earth, he was part of something bigger. He glanced at his friends, who were equally excited about the chance to help. In the following days, the palace buzzed with activity. Jake, Mia, and Dr. Sam shared ideas with Zylara and her advisors. They discussed defense systems, weapons, and communication strategies. Jake found himself explaining how to build simple devices that could help the Zylarians in battle. One evening, while they worked late into the night, Zylara invited Jake to her private chamber. "I want to show you something," she said, leading him through the dimly lit halls. The walls were adorned with beautiful tapestries depicting the history of her people. As they entered her chamber, Jake was struck by the beauty of the room. It was filled with soft colors, shimmering lights, and strange plants that glowed gently in the dark. Zylara smiled at his reaction. "Welcome to my sanctuary. Here I find peace amidst the chaos. Jake felt honored to be invited into such a personal space. It's beautiful, he said sincerely. I can see why you love it here. Zalara walked to a window that overlooked the gardens. These gardens are a symbol of my people's strength. They thrive even in the darkest times. She turned to Jake, her expression serious. I want to share my culture with you. Understanding each other is important if we are to succeed. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I want to understand. I want to help your people. Over the next few days, Zalara taught Jake about her world. They walked through the gardens where she introduced him to various plants and their uses. She showed him how to harness the energy of the stars to create powerful magic. Jake listened intently, fascinated by her knowledge. In return, Jake shared stories about Earth. He talked about the cities, the technology, and the diverse cultures. Zalara listened, wide-eyed as he described Earth's landscapes and the wonders of human invention. As they spent time together, a bond began to grow between them. Zylara's laughter rang through the palace, and Jake found himself smiling more often. They shared moments of joy and sorrow, and their friendship deepened. One evening, as they watched the stars from the palace balcony, Zalara sighed. Sometimes I feel the weight of my responsibilities. I worry about my people, and the future seems uncertain. Jake turned to her, sensing her vulnerability. You're not alone, Zalara. You have a team that believes in you. We will fight for your people together. Zalara smiled, her eyes sparkling. Thank you, Jake. Your support means more than you know. As the days turned into weeks, the palace transformed into a hub of preparation. They built new defenses and trained the Zylarians to use Earth technology. Jake and Zalara worked side by side, planning strategies for the next battle. Their connection grew stronger, and they began to rely on each other more. However, with the growing bond came the reality of the impending threat. Jake knew they were preparing for a battle that could change everything. But with Zalara by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, Jake said one day, looking into Zylara's eyes, we can face anything. Together, she echoed, her voice steady and full of hope. They both knew that their journey was just beginning, and together they would fight for a brighter future for Zalara and its people. The day of the final battle had arrived. The sky was dark, filled with ominous clouds that seemed to mirror the tension in the air. Jake stood on the ramparts of the palace, looking out at the horizon. He could see the enemy forces gathering, their ships blocking out the sunlight. His heart raced as he remembered everything they had worked for, the training, the strategies, and the bond he had formed with Queen Zalara. Are you ready? Captain Lisa asked, joining him on the ramparts. Her face was serious, but Jake could see the determination in her eyes. As ready as we'll ever be, Jake replied, trying to sound confident. We've trained hard, and we know their tactics now. Zalara approached, her presence commanding. She wore armor adorned with symbols of her people, and her silver hair flowed behind her like a banner. Today we fight not just for our survival, but for our future, she declared. We will show them the strength of unity. The soldiers of Zalara cheered, their voices rising in a chorus of hope. Jake felt a surge of excitement. He was fighting not just for the queen, but for the bond they had built. They were all in this together. As the enemy ships drew closer, the tension thickened. Zalara took her place at the front lines, surrounded by her loyal guards and Jake's team. They had positioned Earth technology alongside the magic of Zalara, ready to defend their home. Hold your positions, Zalara commanded, her voice steady. Wait for my signal. The ground shook as the enemy ships landed with a thud. Soldiers poured out, their faces twisted with anger and determination. The enemy commander stepped forward, his dark armor glinting menacingly. You think you can stand against us? He shouted. This is your end, Queen. Zalara stepped forward, her gaze fierce. We will not back down! Fight for our freedom! With a loud roar, the battle began. The air exploded with energy as spells flew through the sky, colliding with blasts from Earth weapons. Jake felt the adrenaline rush through him as he fought alongside Zalara and his friends. He had never experienced anything like this before. Keep pushing! Lisa yelled, leading the charge. We can't let them break our lines! Jake fought with all his might, using every tool and skill he had learned. He felt a sense of pride fighting alongside Zalara, who moved with grace and power, casting spells that lit up the battlefield. Together, they pushed the enemy back step by step. But the enemy commander was relentless. He fought his way through the chaos, seeking Zalara. "I will destroy you!" he shouted, his voice echoing over the battlefield. Jake noticed the commander advancing towards Zylara. "We have to stop him," he yelled to Captain Lisa and Mia. "If he reaches her, it could be over." Without hesitation, they rushed toward the commander, weaving through the fighting. Zylara spotted them and met their eyes, understanding their intent. "Go!" Zylara called out. "I can handle him." "No!" Jake shouted back. "We fight together!" With a fierce determination, they reached the commander just as he raised his weapon to strike Zylara. In a coordinated effort, they unleashed everything they had. Jake swung his tool while Mia used her own weapon, and Lisa channeled her strength into a powerful strike. The commander staggered back, surprised by their teamwork. "How dare you?" he growled. But before he could recover, Zylara unleashed a wave of energy that sent him crashing to the ground. The tide of battle shifted. Seeing their leader fall, the enemy soldiers hesitated. Zylara seized the moment. "Now, push forward!" she commanded. With renewed strength, the defenders charged. The enemy lines began to crumble under the combined might of Zylara's magic and Earth technology. Jake felt a thrill of victory as they pushed the enemy back, step by step. But just as victory seemed within reach, the enemy commander, wounded but not defeated, rose to his feet. "You will pay for this!" he yelled, his eyes blazing with fury. He summoned dark energy, and a powerful wave surged toward Zylara and her team. Jake watched in horror as the wave approached. "No!" he shouted, stepping forward to protect Zylara. In that moment, Zylara reached out, her magic intertwining with Jake's determination. "Together!" she cried. They combined their powers, creating a barrier of light that absorbed the dark energy. The clash of forces created a brilliant explosion of light, blinding everyone for a moment. When the light faded, the enemy commander was gone, defeated by their unity. The remaining enemies turned and fled, their spirit broken. Cheers erupted across the battlefield. They had done it. Zylara turned to Jake, her eyes shining with gratitude and pride. "We won, because we fought together." Jake smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "We did it, Zylara. You're an amazing leader." As the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the battlefield, they knew that this victory was just the beginning. Together they had forged an unbreakable bond, and they would continue to protect their worlds, side by side, now and always.